Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and a returning mechanic in Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate is Adventure. We saw it the first time in Throne of Eldraine, and it's back. The story here is pretty straightforward. Adventure is a perfect name for a D&D mechanic, so much so that people even expected it could be in Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. It's an excellent limited smoothing mechanic and gives you a lot of flexibility. Sometimes things are just a perfect fit. Let's take a look at our two preview cards today. First up is Guardian Naga. 5 white for a 5/6 Naga with Vigilance. And as long as it's your turn, prevent all damage that would be dealt to Guardian Naga. It also has an instant adventure for 2 and a white to exile target artifact or enchantment. There's also Pegasus Guardian, 5 and a white for a 3/3 flyer, and at the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, you create a 1/1 white Pegasus creature token. And then for 1 and a white, it too has an adventure to exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Before talking more about the background on these cards in particular, let's hear about their rules. Matt, help us out here.
Hey Gavin, we are taking a look at Adventures, a returning mechanic in Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. I'm not sure why I'm doing all this intro because I'm going to show up in the middle of your video. You probably have already said all this, but it's fine. It's cool. So anyway, Adventures. You showed off, if I remember, Guardian Naga. Let's take a look at Guardian Naga. Adventures, kind of that cool storybook frame. These, of course, were introduced in Throne of Eldraine. Each adventure has 2 parts. The main part of it is the creature. It has all the stats you'd normally associate with creatures. It's got a mana cost, it's got a power toughness. Any rules text that the creature has shows up on the right side of the rules text box. On the left is kind of its own personal instant or sorcery. Adventures have their own name, their own mana cost, of course, instant or sorcery with the subtype adventure, and then the rules text tells you what to do. When you cast such a card, you can choose either to cast the creature or cast the adventure. Sometimes, for example, Banishing Coils exiles an artifact or enchantment. Sometimes, maybe there's no artifacts or enchantments around and you just want to get Guardian Naga on the battlefield and get with the smashing. You can just cast Guardian Naga. You don't have to do the adventure at all. It is your choice. Now, if you do cast the adventure and the adventure resolves, that's important. We'll get back to that in a second. Instead of going to the graveyard, the card goes on an adventure in exile. So you exile the card. Once it's in exile, you can then cast the creature from exile. This can be immediately, it can be the same turn, it can be a future turn, whatever you want. Adventure must resolve. If it doesn't resolve, so be careful about adventures that require targets, because if the adventure spell does not resolve, instead of going to exile, where your creature will go on an adventure, the card will just go to your graveyard and you won't be able to cast the creature. If the card with an adventure, Guardian Naga for example, is in any other zone, if it's hanging out in your library or sitting in your graveyard, what have you, and something refers to one of its characteristics, like its mana cost, or if you need to know the mana value of the card, use the creature. It has those characteristics in all zones. Only if you are casting the adventure do you use those characteristics. So if I'm casting Banishing Coils, it's an instant spell with a mana value of 3 while it's on the stack. That should be everything you need to know about adventures. They offer flexibility and choice and great adventure. I'm gonna load up a thesaurus and you all have fun. We'll see you next time.
In a format like Commander, there are effects that are good for the game to have around, like artifact and enchantment removal. But often, those cards end up just on the cutting room floor, short of the final build. Adventure helps make sure that in Commander Draft, you have access to these kinds of effects. Guardian Naga can cut down a powerful artifact or enchantment early, then be a big creature late. Pegasus Guardian is a great single target protection spell or combat trick, something which you don't see in Commander often enough. Then later on, you get a flyer which keeps giving you an advantage. Plus, the black-white draft archetype is about creatures leaving the battlefield, so this fits in perfectly. Keep your eye out for adventures as you're drafting. They're natural 2-for-1s. Are you excited for the return of adventure? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll be back tomorrow when I talk about another returning mechanic, Myriad. Until then, have fun going on an adventure. You got this. It sounds like a lot, but it's really pretty straightforward once you cut off some of the corner cases. It's a lot like Monarch. When you hit somebody, you enter or move further into the dungeon. And if you have it on your turn, you get a bonus. Though do note that it's an upkeep trigger, not an end of turn one, so retaining it for a whole turn cycle is extra meaningful.